Still trusting outdated servers to run your business? You could be throwing money away and risking it all. In this episode, we'll uncover why staying off the cloud might be your biggest mistake yet.
Welcome to the Cyber CEO podcast, where we explore business growth, innovation, and technology with insights from successful entrepreneurs.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Cyber CEO podcast. I'm your host, Haree, and today we're going to explore one of the most important tech decisions businesses are making right now, moving to the cloud. You might have heard a lot of buzz around this topic, but today we're breaking it down into what it really means for your business. From saving money to increasing flexibility, we're covering all the benefits that come with embracing cloud technology. I'm joined today by my brilliant co-host, Amish, COO of iceConnect. So Amish, let's kick things off. Why do you think so many businesses are making the switch to cloud right now?
Yeah, so for me, it's mostly for the flexibility, especially with such a massive push towards remote work, hybrid work, and also expanding to global workforces like we discussed in the previous episode.
Yeah.
And pushing the business onto the cloud opens up so many avenues there. The other side of this for me is also the cost effectiveness, especially for a smaller company who maybe doesn't have as much capital to spend on massive amounts of infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
You have access with the cloud with full scalable solutions. You can use as much computing power as you need and just pay for that as you're using it and then scale it back as you need.
One of the biggest issues we've got with cloud is, granted, it is a heavy monthly cost, depending on how big you are and the infrastructure you've got. But you are saving a massive capital cost, right? So with, let's say, a team of 50 people, you're looking at spending near enough 50 grand plus for new infrastructure, servers, hardware, and software which comes with it, right?
At the very least, yeah. Once you take licensing.
Yeah, I mean, you can add another 10, 20 grand these days for licensing with the likes of big providers like VMware being eaten up by Broadcom.
Exactly.
And people having to look for alternative solutions. Our go-to right now is Hyper-V, where it was previously VMware. But getting back to the figures, it's expensive to pay it out once versus the monthly cost.
And I think with good management and just staying on top of what you're using and what you're spending, you can keep that monthly fee at a point where it is still cheaper than having to buy the infrastructure yourself, maintain it, and then also upgrade it.
Well, that was the point I was coming to. You've got the infrastructure. Let's just say you spent the 50K on infrastructure. Now, the monthly equivalent to something like that, let's just arguably say it's £1,500 a month once you've included people's servers, emails, facilities and stuff. If we go to £1,500 a month, say 15 grand, 20 grand a year, let's just call it.
Yeah.
You could arguably say within 3 years, you've hit the same figure as it would have cost you to purchase the equipment outright.
Yep.
But what people don't factor in is the time to recovery, the ability to not have to pay capital expense.
Yeah.
The fact that the support is a lot less. The equipment downtime is a lot less. There's so many factors involved when it comes to paying the monthly fee versus paying it outright.
One thing that I think a lot of people overlook is the fact that especially with the bigger cloud providers, they will be upgrading their infrastructure fairly regularly. As new technologies come out, as faster hard drives, SSDs, as all of these things come out, they will upgrade their infrastructure, and you don't have to worry about upgrading your physical infrastructure. You just tag onto that.
The other thing you've mentioned there is the updates and then the security side of things, right? That's just as important. A side-by-side comparison on costs is most probably the biggest issue, which most people have. They're like, well, I'd rather just pay the capital expense and forget about the monthlies than having to see the monthly numbers coming out of my bank balance. But there's so many more advantages to that, right? You've got the total lifespan of servers which you buy these days is about 5 to 6 years, if I was to be realistic.
Yeah, I think about right.
So you're most probably paying 2 years more by going to cloud.
Yeah.
But simply by going to cloud, you've got the flexibility, the scalability in and amongst all of it, the security because someone else is managing the infrastructure. You've got the disaster recovery built into there, which
Yeah.
we can touch on a little bit, and the automatic updates which come with it. And that's what you mentioned. So the cloud is a no-brainer if you think
Yeah,
about it in most
definitely.
scenarios.
Especially with the scalability and the flexibility,
Mm,
for me, it's a no-brainer that everyone has to start putting at least some of their services into the cloud. Stuff like email and being able to access that from wherever you are
yeah,
without having to worry about, is your office internet still up and running?
yeah. You're not depending on one building.
Yeah.
And that flexibility comes in exactly there. Let's say a company wants to scale up, move offices, or even downsize. Let's be real. That allows you to chop and change that very quickly. You want to start removing staff members. It's a click of a button and you've removed members and you don't have to carry on paying for those. You want to start adding, click of a button, and you've started adding people. You've scaled up, contracted in size if you want, very quickly with those
Yeah.
cost savings there. So look, I for one am a massive advocate of everything cloud where possible. Management is a lot easier as well.
Yes.
So we do encourage it. The biggest concerns people have, I know I've got a array of concerns, but if I was to pick out the top ones, most people say to me is it really secure? Someone else is managing our data. It's sitting on someone else's servers. And how can I be sure that no one else has access to it? So that's the first one. Is it so expensive? And why am I having to pay all of this amount of money per month for it now? I used to have it for free sitting in my office.
Yeah.
And I think saying it was cheap and for free is, again, fool's gold, so to speak, to some degree. And the other one is a lot of businesses think that they're not cloud worthy. Their business is too small, right? They don't think
Yeah,
that.
I've heard that quite a lot.
Yeah, they don't think it applies to them. So security, we know it's secure.
Yeah.
Right.
So going on that point, these, especially the big providers again, are tied in by so many regulations that they have to prove to lots of different people that they have security in place, which, let's be honest, most companies, smaller companies, wouldn't be able to keep up with.
No, not with that
Because
kind of
trying
budget.
to implement, trying to implement something like that with a limited budget is pretty much impossible, whereas these big providers have to do it because it's regulated. So
Yes,
the security they provide is going to be much higher than what you can do yourself normally.
Yeah, and when you think about the security side as well, you think about the businesses which we work with. And like you said, the budget isn't there to
Yeah.
spend that level on security. It's someone else's problem, and with things like ransomware coming about, viruses and stuff, what the cloud affords you is way better. Just have a look at something like snapshots on Microsoft SharePoint, for example. You can go back in time on any set date or time and say, someone's hacked into our systems and locked all of our files. Let's go back to yesterday at 12 o'clock. And you've got everything back, right?
Everything's back.
And that, again, is just the few clicks of a button. The other thing is the increased, when we say bit of security, the storage space. So if you want to take these multiple snapshots, you want to have multiple copies of your data, you're not having to buy more and more storage in your internal infrastructure. It's all sitting in the cloud, right?
Yeah.
So there is that. We did speak about the expensive part. I know.
One thing I wanted to touch on there is we were talking about, like, you have the initial outlay on all the hardware if you want to keep everything in-house, but you then also have the ongoing costs of having to have a very high-speed internet connection, like a leased line. If you want to have your own internal infrastructure, you have to have quite a hefty amount of power. You have to have UPS for battery backups. And all of these things do add on monthly costs there, because just having a triple phase power coming in to power 3-4 servers and storage devices, it's not going to be cheap.
No, and I think these are the other hidden costs which people don't understand, people don't realize exist, right?
Yeah.
Power is massive when you think about the cost of power these days, and just
exactly
putting a mini data center for some of our customers into the building. even those UPSs, you think about them, they're going to cost you, what, £3,000-4,000 a UPS. Every 3 years, you have to replace the batteries
Yeah.
and stuff. Got hard drives going wrong, and most of these sod's law, you've only got 3 years warranty on it, and that's when it all starts to go wrong.
Yeah.
When you start looking at all of that, you added up the TCO over 3 to 5 years. I appreciate it will be cheaper by you hosting it in-house, but the amount of headache you've given yourself and the amount of work involved to maintain that infrastructure
Exactly.
is tenfold. And
I think the cost of the stress on it is worth that little bit extra to just go cloud.
I agree. And the counter argument to that, and some would argue, is that stresses ours as the service provider.
Yes.
Not the customer. And I appreciate that. But you've got to understand that because the stress comes onto us with things like this, it adds cost onto the customer as well, ultimately. Again, it's not really expensive when you look at the bigger picture. If you just base it on numbers, yes, I can understand. But when you look at the bigger picture, it's not really that expensive. And give me an idea. Small businesses, let's say a 2-man band, a 3-man band, it's quite easy for them to jump on to something.
It is.
Like cloud,
I would argue that it is easier for a small business to make that jump to cloud. Even if they are an established small business, I would argue that it's easier because there's less to do to get that move sorted out.
Yeah.
There's less people involved, and ultimately, cost-wise, it's not going to be very expensive. So the argument that my business is too small for cloud, for me, it doesn't really fly, because I think the benefits far outweigh any potential costs.
I think it's more of not so much an argument, but more of a uninformed kind of perspective. People aren't aware. But you look at simple things like Dropbox, that's cloud.
Yeah.
You look at Google Photos, that's cloud. You look at Apple iCloud, that's cloud.
Of course.
So all of these services are already using cloud. You're just not very well aware that they are all sitting on the cloud. And you've got things like Microsoft 365, which is what we use in-house and what we recommend. That's purely cloud. That takes care of your emails, your
I mean,
software.
there's people who signed up for Hotmail accounts back in the day or Gmail accounts, and
Yes.
they're already technically on the cloud. They just don't refer to it as such.
We used to call it the internet, and now they call it the cloud. It's
Yeah,
just a brand name for things sitting on the internet on someone else's servers.
A great definition I heard from somewhere was that the cloud is just someone's computer somewhere on the internet.
Yeah. Or somewhere in a data center owned by Amazon or Microsoft Azure, for example. So, it's just someone else's machine as opposed to yours, which means someone else has got the headache of looking after it, right?
Yeah.
And we talked about the costs. We talked about the flexibility it can bring.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing we mentioned a lot in our previous episode regarding remote working was the collaboration, the efficiencies which we need to bring into remote teams. And that is supported by the cloud, right?
Yeah.
We've got Microsoft Office being able to link documents through SharePoint.
Not wanting to obviously market Microsoft Office too much for them, but just one thing that I've had experience with very recently with a customer who we've moved over to SharePoint, and they were previously using a local file server, and they had an Excel spreadsheet, which was their Bible. They use that every day between multiple people.
Yeah.
And what they'd have is people either phoning or shouting across the office, "Who's got file open? Can you close it? I need to make changes."
I think we've all been there at some point.
Yeah. And I showed them that now that they're on SharePoint, they can have 4 people, 5 people in that spreadsheet simultaneously and see exactly what the other person is clicking on and work on it at the same time without having to worry about any of that. And the excitement it's actually quite funny to see from this side so far into this process. But that's one of the big benefits in collaboration.
Powerful. Very powerful, that. And I think take it outside of Microsoft, for example, but keeping it to Microsoft 365, the integration with just third-party products. You've got things like Trello.
Yeah.
You've got Calendly, just very simple things, HubSpot. All of these integrate into Microsoft 365, which in itself is a cloud product.
Yeah.
It makes sense to make sure that your products are all sitting on the cloud so they can all talk to each other. And those integrations provide automation, which basically streamlines workflows, automates so many tasks. For example, you don't have to pull information from your website and add it to your spreadsheet manually. You can have automations do that in the cloud. You don't have to have an inquiry, start putting it through a funnel and populating things in other places and sending out streamline of emails and stuff. That's all automation, which can be done
for you
in the cloud, right? Which gives it a massive productivity boost to any organization.
Yeah.
And it's the collaboration again. I know we mentioned previously in another episode about Slack, about Teams. Again, these are only possible if you have cloud version of their licenses.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think a massive tool there, really good to have. And our recommendation is always, especially the type of businesses which are, let's say, under 100 users, you could always try and implement the cloud yourself.
Yes.
The problem with that is you're not going to get the implementation spot on. But more importantly, you're not going to get the security right.
Yes.
And that means that you are leaving yourself wide open to attacks at some point down the line, which is why we always say partner with an IT professional, partner with an IT company which knows what they're talking about. Let them do the implementation for you. If you want to take over management once it's done, then that's a conversation you can have. But it's very important you get it right on implementation. The security setup on this stuff is of paramount importance. If you've got servers in the cloud, they need to have the correct firewall policies. They need to have the correct backup policies, retention policies, things like this. They're so important that if you don't do that, you've almost negated the benefits of going into the cloud, right?
Yeah, so you definitely want to go with someone who you can trust to implement it for you and who knows what they're doing. One of the misconceptions that I've heard so many times is that, oh, my data's on the cloud, so it must be backed up. Where a lot of providers don't have a backup as such.
Yeah.
It is your data's there. It's got redundancy in terms of if there is hardware failures, but if something happens to the data itself, it's not backed up. And if you don't know about that, and you don't implement a backup solution for that, then there's a risk that you lose that. And these sort of things, if you don't understand these things, it can lead to a loss of your business potentially.
Yeah. Absolutely. And we spoke about that earlier, things like ransomware, virus attacks. The whole idea of going cloud is to help you mitigate those risks, but only through correct implementation.
Yeah.
So when we look at cloud as well, we are also looking at cloud providers.
Yes.
You've got Microsoft 365, which is your email solution, your Office apps suite, and your file storage solution. Competitor to that is Google Workspaces.
Yep.
I personally prefer Microsoft 365. I think it does a bit of a better job. It's improving day on day. The features coming out of it are phenomenally great. And most people already know it, having worked in a lot of businesses.
I think it's a Microsoft product. Microsoft's been around as long as most people know. I think it's that familiarity. And they do provide a good, stable service. Ultimately.
What, from your experience, technically, do you think gives Microsoft the edge over Google Workspaces in this scenario?
Mostly, I think it is integration within Windows, because most people are using that still. And for me, it works so seamlessly together that it just makes sense. And there are so many integrations, like you mentioned, with third parties that are designed around these Microsoft products, that it is just, I think, the biggest one out there.
Yeah, I think so. And this wouldn't be an appropriate podcast if we didn't mention the impact on the environment with all of these data centers being built and servers. And I think it's fair to say it's more efficient to have servers running in data farms than it is for every organization to have servers running internally, providing their own services, right?
Yeah, definitely. What you'll find with a lot of these data farms is they will have massive resources within single individual servers, which means that they're compressing down the amount of hardware that's required, therefore reducing the amount of power required just with that. And because of obviously the way things are going, they are all now pushing for renewable energy in their data centers.
Yes. They're all trying to get to that zero carbon across all of the DCs. And by them being able to do it, they've got the money to do it, unlike us small folk, I should say. They've got the billions and billions to be able to invest in those renewable energies.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember, there was a recent article on the news. Microsoft has a subsea data center where they've just dumped it into the ocean, and that provides the cooling for all of the servers and the equipment inside. And that means they don't have to run all of these air conditioning units.
Yeah.
But they still get the full functionality out of it. Not a hope in hell for any of us putting together a project like that on the kind of budgets we want to be throwing at it.
Do we want to put it in a fish tank?
No, obviously not. But it gives you an idea, right? They have the money to throw at this and piss about with it. Let them do it. And while we can utilize their resources, so to speak.
Exactly.
If you are a small business and you are thinking about going into the cloud, what kind of steps, what kind of actions do we need to take to A, figure out, can we go into the cloud? And B, if we are going to the cloud, what's the best way to do it? And give me maybe a miniature checklist of what we need to ensure we get from the cloud and how we make sure it's set up and the right fit.
So I think the first thing that any business would need to do before even considering going to the cloud is look at what services you currently use. Look at all of the IT infrastructure you have and try and find out what out of that, what can you move to the cloud? There might be legacy applications which still require your servers to be on premise. And for those things, maybe you can downscale the size of the servers by moving other services over. Things like the smaller things like email, I say smaller in terms of the ability to move them. Something like email, you can move quite easily, but something like a specific application server that's been custom developed may be a bit more difficult. So just look at these services and prioritize which ones can be moved quickly to reduce the load on your existing infrastructure, and then you can slowly start working on the other stuff.
I think it's fair to say, even if they've got custom built applications, most people are building applications for cloud delivery, cloud hosting.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And if they're not, then you might need to ask some serious questions to your provider about why are you not moving in that direction, and maybe look at alternative products on the market. It might be better to make the switch out now with a company which is native to the cloud and knows what they're doing than to try and find one which is trying to piecemeal things together and throw you onto the cloud that way. So that's very important. And I know you've mentioned doing an assessment of what they're currently using. I think this is an important part to mention again. Work with the right provider, work with the right IT company, make sure they know what they're talking about. I don't think any company out there which is of a significant size could go it solo without having expert IT help on hand to move them onto cloud.
Yeah,
and
you want to get it right from the start, because if you mess it up at the beginning, you either have a potential security hole or you end up paying for services which you maybe don't need, or you're overpaying, and it'll end up costing you, and trying to claw that back later can prove more difficult. So planning it right from the start, and like you said, working with a partner who knows what they're doing with the cloud already will help you to get there quicker, more efficiently, and cheaper.
We've seen that a lot, haven't we? People who come to us and they've already got a cloud set up, but it's just set up completely wrong. Wrong licenses applied and wrong types of servers put into place, underpowered just to save on cost and stuff. And then on one hand, they're arguing that, or they're complaining that something is going incredibly slow. And on the other hand, you're like, you've totally under-resourced some of the servers you've got online, and
Yeah.
Someone should have warned you about this before.
And then the flip side is some of them have come with under-resourced servers on one side and licenses which haven't been removed for people who haven't been at the company for 2-3 years.
Yeah. Cost savings there just alone
Yeah.
in handful of people being offboarded properly. But that comes down to onboarding and offboarding procedures being done right,
Yes.
either internally or with your external IT partner. And again, the providers we talked about online, we mentioned Google Workspaces, we mentioned Microsoft 365.
Yeah.
They're amazing for your day-to-day productivity apps,
Yes.
your emails, your file storage, your Microsoft Words and Excels. But when it actually comes to putting servers on the cloud, and this doesn't apply to everybody, but it would apply to a reasonable number of our customers, which we have worked with in the past, a reasonable number of our listeners. When they're looking to put servers into the cloud, we've really got one of three options. And if I did it in order of market share, right at the top, you've got AWS, Amazon Web Services, by far the biggest provider of cloud services in the world. Very far down second, you've got Microsoft Azure.
Yeah.
And then you've got Google Cloud, isn't it?
I think just Google Cloud.
Yeah, it's called Google Cloud. Then you've got Google Cloud. We primarily ourselves use AWS, although we do have a few services running on Microsoft Azure. I don't think we've really got anything on Google Cloud, have we?
No, not at the moment. And I think we've found that comfort spot with AWS and especially for Linux infrastructure and things like that. And then for any Microsoft infrastructure, it just makes sense to stick it on Azure because it just works there. That's what it's designed for.
And there are several other cloud providers. I'm not saying these are the only ones you have.
Yes.
But these are probably the largest market share providers. If you're looking at specific types of services, let me give you an example. We have file storage, archive file storage online.
Yeah.
Any of those providers are going to be stupendously expensive.
Yes.
But then you've got companies such as Wasabi, who are stupendously cheap at providing you with online file storage.
Yeah.
If you're trying to hit a very specific topic, a very specific type of online service in the cloud, there may be cheaper providers than any of the top three.
Yeah.
There was also web hosting. You could do your own dedicated servers on so many different providers nowadays in the cloud, and it's quite easy to do. And again, I don't think I would choose any one of these companies for specific types of web hosting, primarily because it's a lot more complex to set up. There's a lot more to it than just buying a server in the cloud. And some of these specified specialist companies for web hosting do it a lot better, right?
Yeah, and they, like certain companies, for example, with the web hosting, they will set up and manage the server as the web hosting server, as opposed to just having a bare bones server that you then have to install the correct software on, make sure you're updating the correct versions of everything, PHP, SQL, etc.
Yeah.
And having that there is it's a great benefit because it reduces how much you have to worry about.
Yeah, and it's fully managed for you. So you don't have to actually worry about the server management side again. And that again comes with its own separate fee for web hosting, which I strongly recommend you leave in the hands of experts. So we've got multiple providers. The other thing is the learning curve, I think, from moving to the cloud is a lot easier these days, isn't it? Everything should be seamless. It should be transferring across quite simply.
Yeah, mostly yes. I would still say, so architecting a good infrastructure on the cloud is still complex. Making sure you're getting it right, you're not overpaying, you're scaling up and down as and when you need to. These things, this is where you want to hire an expert.
Yeah.
But just to start with, especially as a small business, to get yourself up and running on the cloud, it doesn't take like years of learning where setting up your own infrastructure internally used to.
I get that. And getting your team trained on it, like you said, was easy. Getting your own self trained on it is not too difficult to learn. So once you've got the cloud infrastructure deployed, I think the big one here is making sure the security is top notch. Making sure you've got disaster recovery plans in place, backup plans in place. obviously the migration itself will involve some downtime as well. Everyone else needs to know what is happening about that internally as well. So a lot of that is wrapped up into security.
Yes.
Once you've implemented cloud, check the security, check it twice, check it thrice, make sure that is as good as it can be.
And make sure there's ongoing monitoring as well, because security is not a one and done thing. It is something that you have to stay on top of. You have to keep making sure that you're blocking any loopholes that may have popped up.
Yeah. And that changes, right? Every week, something new is coming out. Someone patches something, some new tech comes out. Someone has to work on it. So it's an ongoing routine of making sure the security is there. Again, one of the reasons we recommend either have in-house IT resources doing this or employ an external IT company to do it. Don't think as a business owner or manager, you have the knowledge and the time to put behind doing something like this. And I think that's very important. And I think the final thing I would recommend everybody moving to the cloud does is monitor cost.
Yes.
That's quite easily done on a small scale team of simply making sure you have the right onboarding procedures, right offboarding procedures. Licenses need to be added, licenses need to be removed. And we're not talking about licenses just for Microsoft 365. It could be antivirus licenses, MDR licenses. Everything can be removed as soon as someone leaves and added as another person starts. That's how you're saving money. That's how you're going to be reducing those monthly bills as well.
Yeah. With monitoring costs, it comes back to having the expert there with you, especially when you're looking at a slightly bigger business where you've got servers hosted on AWS or Azure, and scale them up and down to cope with your demand. So if you know that, let's say, the summer holidays are a very quiet period for you, but then around Christmas, let's say retail, your sales spike up and you have to be able to, your web servers have to be able to cope with that demand. You can scale them up. You don't have to have a massive server running throughout summer, costing you a fortune, just so that your wintertime websites are fine. You make sure that you are upscaling when you need it, then more importantly, downscaling when you don't need it to reduce those costs.
Absolutely. I think that's spot on there. And that's one of the perks of moving to cloud. So if I was to summarize the 5 biggest perks of moving to cloud, we've got increased flexibility, which you've just mentioned. Scaling up, scaling down as and when you need. If you suddenly double your staff overnight, you've got the ability to do that straight away in the cloud, just as much as if you want to reduce the number of people working for you, you can do that straight away. We mentioned cost saving, and that isn't just a case of buying the equipment and that's the cost saving. No, the cost saving comes out of the total running, the total management, the total flexibility. Overall, there is a cost saving to be had. Improved security, if implemented in the right way, very important there. And it's got to be implemented by IT professionals, whether that's in-house IT professionals or whether you're employing the services of a company. Very important to have the right improved security. We've got the automatic updates which come with cloud, and that is your server-side updates, which you no longer have to manage because a third party is dealing with it. The hardware, which is failing and being resolved for you in the background and you not having to deal with it. And the scalability. You're able to scale your business very quickly, as we mentioned around flexibility, but the scalability also allows you multi-regional scalability. So you could have a server running in London and a replication of that server running in New York, for example. And because they are replicating each other, the people in New York can access it just as quick as the guys in London can. You can have failover between data centers within the same country. So we could have a site in London, a site in Manchester. And all of this is scaled at the touch of a button. It's not as if you have to have expert programming level abilities. No, it's all done within the platforms of AWS or Microsoft Azure or Google. And it makes life a lot easier for the people managing it, a lot more availability, a lot more flexibility for the companies using it. Amish, thank you very much for being here. Thank you for all of your insights into the cloud and all the experience you've brought to the table, the expertise you've brought to the table. And most importantly, thanks for everything you do for us and our customers in terms of keeping them secure and safe on the cloud within our own company. So thank you.
Let's do it. Thank you.
Speak to you soon and see you on the next episode. And that wraps up this episode of the Cyber CEO. Today, we explored the many benefits of moving your business to the cloud, from cost savings to improved flexibility and security. Remember, if you're considering migrating to the cloud, it's all about choosing the right provider and planning for your business needs. If you've got any questions or need any advice on anything you've covered today or in any of our other episodes, feel free to reach out at thecyberceo.com for no obligation help. Until next time, keep innovating and we'll catch you soon.
Thanks for tuning in to the Cyber CEO podcast. If you found value in today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with fellow entrepreneurs. For more tips on tech and business growth, visit our website, thecyberceo.com. Keep innovating and see you in the next episode.